It's your boy C-Roc, and you're listening to the What Are You Made Of with Mike C-Roc podcast, sponsored by Nations Lending, Home Loans Made Human, helping people finance their dream homes throughout the nation. And I just want to give a special thanks to Nations for sponsoring our podcast and helping us get it set up with all the artwork, the graphic design of the What Are You Made Of movement. Nick Hollis, give a great shout out to Nick Hollis, graphic design master. And just want to thank them and remind everyone, if you're looking to buy a home and you need financing, get pre-approved first. Call your Nation's Lending loan officer to help you out. And you can call my team at any time. So I have a special guest today. It's one of my favorite people, Mallisa Jackson. She actually connected with me through Grant Cardone and the 10X movement. And I believe we were in the 10X stages speaking course together. And we connected through that, and which is it's a huge thing when you go to these events and you start to network with people. We obviously love to hear Grant talk. We love to hear the other people that we go to see talk, and they're following their movements. But the networking that comes from being involved with these things is amazing. And the people that you get to meet, the like-minded people, the growth-minded people, the inspirers, it's huge. And so I just want to remind everyone that What Are You Made Of movement is about using your past events and experiences, good and bad, to help inspire you to get through tough times in your future, get through roadblocks, and even if things are going great, busting through to the next level using your past. And so I wanted to bring Mallisa on today, and I'm going to share a brief bio about Mallisa. And Mallisa Jackson, a mover and a shaker in life, has come a long way in her career to develop a system that will not only give her clients a self-inspiring attitude that will lead to success, but the attitude to attain personal achievement in every facet of life. Armed with a positive outlook and a business mindset, Mallisa has taken on the world as well as numerous personal and medical obstacles in order to become the inspiring and dedicated leader she is today. As a self-educated young woman, Mallisa obtained her GED and later, while working up to 4 jobs, put herself through college and became the first person in her family to graduate, earning a bachelor's degree in business administration and an associate's degree in business accounting. Mallisa was able to start her own business at the early age of 23 and has been flourishing within the Boise and surrounding areas since. Now, there's some more there, but Mallisa, I'm going to let you get into some of that because some of the stuff is what you would cover anyway. And I'll let you get into what your business is and share all that as well. But I believe everyone has a story, Mallisa. And what is your story?
I mean, my story was after all of that, right? After I finally built my business that I started while working 4 jobs, I remember being able to quit my night job and actually fully invest into everything. I quit my night job, my final night job that I was working while building my business in real estate, and about a month later got diagnosed with an incurable neurological illness where my brain did not fit into my skull. That can become spontaneously fatal before or after treatment. And it just changed everything massively after that. And it's something that really changed everything for the way I look at my life now, and that's how I look at my purpose moving forward.
Now, how old were you when you got diagnosed with that?
I was 25 years old. I just said 25.
Wow. And during that, I'm familiar with your story, but if my listeners aren't, explain what you had to go through once you were diagnosed.
Yeah, so I mean, the diagnosing treatment was even more weird. So I had terrible headaches. I couldn't remember how to get home. My right hand turned into a claw. My right foot was basically closing in and turning into a claw as well. And I lost all mobility of my right hand, which I'm right hand dominant. And when I went into the neurosurgeon to get evaluated, immediately he was super standoffish. He was like, "Oh, you're fine. You're too young for this, yada, yada. Everything's fine." Until he started doing nerve testing on me and realized that I had the symptoms of somebody who had a spontaneous stroke. And the entire morale changed radically, 100%. Everything went from real easy going, like, "Oh, this is a waste of my time," to "Holy shit, what happened? What is wrong with you? We need to look into this very intensely." And that's how I went about getting diagnosed. But the problem that I ran up into after getting diagnosed was they had just operated on a 19-year-old woman in my state that had the same condition, had a newborn baby, and she was a vegetable shortly afterwards. Like she survived the surgery, but was a vegetable afterwards. So at that point, I had a serious neurological illness that the neurosurgeons were terrified to operate on me with because it was a life or death situation for operating and not operating. So it led to me fighting for my life very, very intensely. It led to me getting brain surgery and then getting 12 additional surgeries to try to avoid them from cauterizing or removing the back part of my brain. And I did all of that while working because I had to keep a roof over my head.
So let me ask you something. No pun intended here, but what was your mindset at age 25 when this happened? First of all, hearing about it, I guess you had some symptoms first, right? And probably some
Mhm.
headaches and things like that. But what was your mindset going like when you got that diagnosis? I know how you would handle it now
Mhm.
because I know you now and I know what you're made of. But what was it then?
Oh, I was pissed. To be completely frank with you, I was totally pissed. I mean, you covered it a little bit in my bio, but I was self-educated from the age 9 up. Neither one of my parents graduated high school, and I was not put in public school. So I taught myself everything from the age 9 up and graduated with my GED by the time I was 16. I'd worked 4 jobs to go through college. I sacrificed everything to get to, building a better future. And then I felt like I finally reached it. And the world was all like, haha, fuck you. You don't get to do what you want to do. Your sacrifices weren't enough. And I just felt like the world had moved the cheese. I mean, I hope you don't mind me cussing on here. I very much take the David Goggins approach where I'm like, I'm going to be direct and blunt because, this is me telling my story. But
Yeah.
I was really, really upset about it. I went into a pity party. I did fight for my life. Obviously, I won. I really educated everything. I understood that I needed to fight for myself and that a lot of times people know what's best for them. So I did that well, but my mindset in regards to positivity, I was not in a positive spot. I was pissed off at the world.
Yeah. And, I did a podcast on this and I wrote a blog about everything you go through in life. You don't realize it while it's happening, but if you once you grasp this concept, everything that you go through in life is a training session for
Oh
your
yeah.
future, right? If you make it through it, then you were made to go through that for future endeavors.
Hmm.
And you don't realize it when you're going through it. And at younger ages, we don't realize it a lot of times. But once you grasp that, and I want to get that message out to everyone that everything is a training session,
Oh
good,
yeah.
bad, average, whatever it is. And what that has done right now for you since you've made it through it, and I'm sure you still have some effects from it, and there could be some future things that come along. But after that took place, how long after that did your fire get? I mean, you already had a fire before, but your real fire get lit so that you started, being inspired by it and then wanting to help other people. Like, give me that kind of that time frame, and then how you got into the 10X movement and all that jazz.
Yeah. So I mean, my story from that part of it came from rock bottom. Like after the 12th surgery I had, which I'll just give like the audience context on this. What they do when they give you this surgery is called a spinal fluid leak. If you guys want to look into it, check into the Golden State Warriors coach. He had it as well. All right. So how they treated the spinal fluid leak is they flip you on your stomach, no painkillers, nothing. All they give you, if you're lucky, is one anxiety medication, and they flip you on your stomach and they inject blood and glue into your spinal cord. And the reason why they do that while you're awake, while you're not in any pain, is because you have to judge on if it gets physically unbearable. If it does not get physically unbearable, a lot of the times it doesn't work. If it gets past that point, you can become paralyzed. So it's a really, really crappy situation. So after my last surgery, I still could only be upright for 3 hours at a time. 3 hours at a time. And I'd always be like, hey, I want to change my life. My house is a mess. My financial situation's a mess. I want to change this. But I would try to change all these things in my life and then I would black out. So I started doing small incremental changes. And that's how I started rebuilding it. I started realizing that I could change things by small adjustments every single time. And I did that. I did one habit a week every single week. And I did that for 2 years. And this made my life unrecognizable. The illness hasn't gone away. I still struggle a lot with the adversities, but it's made it so I've been able to develop enough habits around my life to live above average life and perform an above average level. in regards to where that fork in the road moment hit for me, I just got disgusted with where my situation was. And I realized there wasn't going to be anyone who was going to change it. I could either just, and I don't mean to knock people that are on it, namaste to them, I could either get on disability and just give up, or I could fight for a new life. And I tried to get on disability, and there would have been no way for me to get it unless I moved back in with my parents or something like that, because I'd had to make sure that I only earned a certain amount of income for a particular amount of time, and there's no way to do that living on my own.
Right now, just to clarify, you're talking about Steve Kerr, the coach of the Golden State Warriors, had the same procedure done. I remember when
Yes.
he went through some things. I wasn't really privy to what he was going through
Yeah.
at that
So
time.
he didn't have the brain surgery, but he had the spinal fluid leak. So they did the spinal fluid leak treatments on me to try to avoid a brain surgery where it would have cauterized or removed the back part of my brain.
Gotcha. And then what you've learned through that process of not being able to sit up straight for more than 3 hours is starting small and chipping away, adding a habit,
Mhm.
adding like basically a little training sessions, right? So this is something that people should do besides going through what you went through. They should do this anyway. When they're trying to make a change,
Yeah.
instead of overhauling. Now, I don't have a problem with massive action and attacking things fast and doing a lot of activities. But when you're trying to implement something new,
Hmm.
instead of being overwhelmed by it, so there's nothing wrong with doing what you did. And I'm sure that you had the ability to teach others that same method after you've gone through it yourself, right?
Yeah, and that's what I've done with a lot of my clients. I mean, we talked about the 10x rule as well, but if you could change something every single day, like if you're changing 1%, growing 1% every single day, I did the math on it. I don't remember what exactly I think it was like 30x is what it is. Like you're creating massive change. So you're evaluating what's not working, what can I do better on a regular basis, and making small incremental changes on a daily basis or a weekly basis. It'll make it, if you compound it, completely unrecognizable for you in the years to come or the weeks to come or the months to come.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. So again, this going through this painful experience, emotional as well, the lessons that you've learned are invaluable. And the methods that you went through to get out of it and to get off of rock bottom and then start to explode. I mean, that's something that you did for yourself, but also now you have that valuable knowledge and experience to share with others and have a huge, massive impact on the world, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So then how did you get him? Like, how did you hear of Grant and the 10X movement? And, did you go to the Growth Con when I was there last year? And
Yeah, I found Grant's work in the process of implementing a habit a week. So the habit a week that I dropped and implemented when I found Grant's work is I stopped watching the news and I started watching motivational videos 24/7. So I downloaded YouTube Red, and all I would listen to was motivational combinations. And I remember listening to this random one. I had no idea who Grant was, and I was like, this guy's really weird, but he's a fucking genius. Like
Mhm.
he's so, like he was saying some things that at that time I really disagreed with because I was a minimalist the time I found Grant. I was all about saving. I was all about, pinching pennies, coupons, and all of that stuff. And he said a lot of things that changed my thought process on money. But he also said a lot of things that I agreed with, which was success is your duty, obligation, and responsibility. For me, I learned that I have a responsibility since I'm on this planet to be as successful as I can. And I learned that from a gal that was 17 years old with my illness after surgery, was doing fine until she wasn't, and she didn't wake up the next day because it can become spontaneously fatal due to brainstem compression. And I really resonated with Grant when he said that success is your duty, obligation, and responsibility. So there was some inherent things that I related with him on, and then a bunch of things that I didn't think the same way that he did, and that was money. And obviously, he knew a crap ton more about money than I did. So I decided to study him excessively to learn what it was that he knew about money better than me, because he knew a lot more than I did and continues to know a lot more than I do about money. So that's how I found him. But yeah, I definitely went to GrowthCon. I thought it was absolutely fascinating. And it's been a great experience in reprogramming the small think that I have from my childhood, from my environment, and I think a lot of people struggle from.
And that was your first growth con last year? Okay.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind me asking, how old are you? Because I want to know how long it was since you've been diagnosed with the,
I'm
you know.
30. I just turned 30 in October.
Okay, so about 5 years ago, give or take.
hmm
Okay. And
Yep.
so I remember you talking about on one of your posts within the last couple of weeks about your why and how that's so cliche, but how that's so important. And you just hit on that right
hmm
there about that the young lady that didn't make it, and that knowing that any day, by the way, with your condition that you have, or any of us, I mean, I feel like I'm healthy, but I could not wake up tomorrow. So I feel like
Exactly.
every day, man, I gotta wake up and jam, man. I gotta fire up, do everything I possibly can in my possible that I can and at my ability each and every day to provide as much valuable to my family, my friends, my work, myself. It's so important. But you talked about that, and you want to cover that a little bit with your, like, the cliche that you said, which your why.
Exactly. So, I mean, when I first got into self-development, I thought it was so frustrating. Every conference I'd go to, people are like, you need to figure out your why, you need to, but you really do. And your why needs to be bigger than you do. So what gets me going every day is knowing that there's still people within the Chiari community, which is the neurological illness, that are still bedridden. I spoke to one gal who had like over 12 brain surgeries, like actual brain surgeries. And then there's people that pass away randomly. If you go into the Chiari community, you see purple candles, and that's the way that people show that another person with Chiari's passed on. And I wake up every day trying to tap into that why, understanding that for some reason I'm still alive, for some reason I'm still awake, and I need to go and do something with it. And I'm not perfect on it by any means, but it helps me with combating when things get difficult. When I go against the grain, or I'm pushing towards a goal and I get smacked in the face like everyone does. It helps me with tapping into my why when, not if, adversity pops up. So if you guys are watching this, I'd like to challenge you to figure out what your why is. What's the thing that you're on this planet to do? And I think Simon Sinek says it best. He's like, why do you do what you do, and why should other people care? What is your why, and how are you going to impact other people's lives with that why and make a difference on this planet?
Yeah, and it leads me to the question. One of the questions I was going to ask you is, what do you do when you get in a rut or something tough happens to you? A couple weeks ago, we talked a little bit too about something that fell apart for something for you that you were doing or whatever.
Mhm.
And I threw a little comment to you, letting you know it's only money, right? And let's keep trucking. But what do you do when you get into a rut or you feel like there's some kind of conflict? Like,
Yep.
what is your routine for that?
So, I mean, I'm still trying to go through adversities. Everyone is every day. But for me, I try to do a couple things. I execute what Grant says. I write down my goals. Write down your goals so you're focused on the future versus the adversity that you're facing right now. It helps you with tapping into your why as well. Your future's pulling you forward. Another thing I do is I try to listen to music that makes me happy. I like to sing, so I'll listen to music that I can sing along with that's lighthearted, that helps me with moving my life forward. I'm a huge David Goggins fan. I tap into what he calls the cookie jar. The cookie jar is a list of all of the things that you have overcame in your life. And going into that cookie jar, and you're like, hey, I am a badass. This is what I've gone through. This is what I've created in my life. These are all the other adversities that I thought were not something I could overcome that I have overcame in the past. So those are the three things that I try to do on a regular basis when adversity hits. Write down my goals, do something that makes me laugh or sing or dance. Evan Carmichael talks about that a lot. And then tap into the cookie jar to repurpose the fact that I've overcame other adversities in the past.
That's awesome. Exactly. And you know what else helps me? I always try to get another win somehow. So I don't care if it's a big win or a
Hmm.
little win, it doesn't matter. But I try to immediately, as fast as I can,
Yes.
put my sights on a target that I can win at quick. And then the other thing we talk about in sales and business a lot of times, you're going to have ups and downs and losses and prospects. You might have them sold and they back out or things fall through. If you have a big enough pipeline of prospects, it hurts a lot less. So if it
Oh yeah.
hurts really bad, a lot of times it's because your pipeline's not big enough. And I
Mhm.
always preach about this with my team is constantly, look, guys, we got to prospect all the time. We got to build our pipeline as big as possible, get as many people to know us. And that's the mission that I'm on right now, is that I want to get known by everyone and reach millions of people, not because I want to be famous, because it's just for the heck of it, but it's about people knowing who I am, allows me to help more people. It teaches my team how to do it for themselves in the mortgage business and with realtors and prospects and everything. It shows my kids, my wife, and everybody that's watching. And that's another thing, Mallisa. Really, a lot of people need to understand that they're being watched all the time, not by Big Brother, but they're being watched by people all the time. And that's another thing that drives me when I'm faced with a decision of whether to go to the gym or not if I don't feel like it, or make that extra call, or work on a Saturday, do a podcast on a Saturday or Sunday. It's a no-brainer for me because I know people are watching me, and I want to be the
Mhm.
best example for them so that they say, oh man, C-Roc would do, he would say yes to that.
Yeah. Absolutely, 100%. And I love what you're talking about. Like, if you are a victim of circumstance and shit hits the fan and your family's at risk because of it, like, and I think Grant talks about it a lot as well, blowing up your pipeline. Don't rely on just one person. Take enough massive action that you're basically indestructible. That doesn't mean go be an asshole to everybody and burn a bunch of bridges just because everyone knows you and you can get away with it. But it means go out there and blow up on such a level that if someone's coming after you, which they will, especially as you get bigger, if you're watching this, the bigger you get, the more haters you're going to have. They can't do your family harm. They can't do, what your mission harm. Or if they can, it's very little because of the fact that you're completely omnipresent and you're not reliant on one flow, one business, one deal, one anything.
Right. In our business, we have real estate agents that we work with, and they send us their business. We try to help real estate agents grow their business. No lenders do that. Most lenders have their hands out and they're just looking for a client sent their way. We approach it a little differently, a lot differently actually. We try to help them first get clients. We go out and get clients, and then give them to them, and then in turn, obviously, they're going to want to send us their clients. But there's some agents out there, one, that don't know what they're doing. They pass their test and they don't do any further studying and better themselves. They're living paycheck to paycheck. They're, not filling their pipelines up, and then everything's a 911 to them. And if we have enough agents that we're working with and communicating that know us, we don't have to work with the agents that aren't bettering themselves and aren't taking their career as, being professionals. And so that's very important to us. And when we first started in the mortgage business, we would just work with anybody that would send us somebody our way or pay attention to us a little bit. And once we
Mm.
got into the 10X movement and understanding what are you made of movement, look, we don't need to work with just anybody. We'll work with everybody, but they got to be on the same page as us, the same mission as us, and looking at things seriously and as a profession rather than just a job. So yeah,
Oh yeah,
that's huge, man.
I love it.
So hey, so what's your favorite book of all time?
I think my favorite book of all time, God, that's a difficult one. But I would say Be First or Be Last. No, actually, Be Obsessed or Be Average by Grant, I think is my favorite one. It's difficult. It's a difficult
Well,
mix up between both of those. But I think I would say Be Obsessed or Be Average is probably my all-time favorite book.
and that's by Grant Cardone, by the way, if you're listening. And so that's your favorite one. And then another thing you could look at too is like, what do you think the most inspiring or most important book ever written was?
Those are the only books I read.
Okay, I get it. I get it.
I really think that one, yeah, I think I want that. I mean, I am not a fan of fiction personally. My husband hates it so much because he loves fiction, but I mainly only read self-development books for the most part.
Me too.
For
Me
me,
too.
since education was at such a small level when I was younger, and I, didn't have any real access to books and stuff like that, I only try to spend my time on self-development books as possible.
And what are you reading now, currently?
Right, right now, I am rereading the physical version of the 10X rule. I've never read the physical one before. I've normally only have done audiobooks, and it just seems like it's hitting differently. So that's one book I'm rereading again. I reread the same books on a regular basis because I feel like so many people especially in the day and age of Instagram. We're like, oh, look how smart I am in my gigantic bookshelf. It's like, okay, how many did you read, but how many did you apply? That's two different things. So I reread the same books on a regular basis, and I'm also rereading The Slight Edge as well.
What was that? The Slide
The Slight Edge.
Slight Edge. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Who wrote that? Do you know?
I do not remember his name, but
I'll get that from.
it's a perfect book to read if you're talking about incremental growth, if you're talking about, developing habits, because that's the entire book. The entire book is about, you already know what the hell you need to do. You just need to go out there and do it. And success and failure are not overnight things. It's just a matter of what side of the trajectory and momentum are you on with your habits that you're implementing.
Awesome. Well, listen, so if you're listening to this and you don't read books right now, but you'd like to, but you're kind of overwhelmed by a book, and you look at a book and it's 300 pages and you're like, man, I'm never going to get through that thing. First of all, you're thinking the wrong way, but I got a little reading hack for you. And I do this, and my 13-year-old son does this. Every single morning we get up in the morning, part of our routine is we read 10 pages. And then before we go to bed, we read 10 pages. That's 20 pages a day. 20 times 30 is 600. That's a month. You can get through 300-page books in a month, or 24 books a year. And all you got to do is read 10 pages, which takes about, maybe 4 to 5 minutes. So how do you eat an elephant, they say? One bite at a time. One bite at a time. So take the book, 10 pages. Guys, listen, and if you don't want to do 10, just do 5. Do 5, and you'll get through one book a month. And you'll blow everybody else out of the water. You'll become an expert on a topic. And the other thing with that is, I like it anyway, because if you read 20, 30, 40, 100 pages, and it's like not a fiction book, if it's like a self-help book or, some kind of profession book, you will retain a lot more of the information, taking it in smaller increments. So I like doing that rather than binge reading. That's just something I do. Even if I'm on a plane, I travel a lot. When I'm on a plane, I try to read 10 pages at a time and stop and really think about and meditate what I just read about. So yeah, that's something that I found as a little hack that's helped me big time. And my 13-year-old son's reading more books. I mean, he's right now he's reading Relentless, Tim Grover's Relentless. He's read the 10X Rule. He's read Sell or Be Sold. He's read all the books that everybody else should be reading, and he's 13 years old. And he hates it sometimes, but I push him anyway onto it and try to explain to him why it's important. And then we talk about what he's read. And it's a great thing to do with your kids, man. And
I love the fact that you're talking about what you learned and what you read, because a lot of people, they like to glamorize. They're like, oh, I read 100 books this year. And it's like, okay, which ones did you apply? Like, what did you actually learn from it? So I like the fact that when you're asking, like, what did you learn from reading that, it makes it so you're able to apply it a lot more into your life.
Yeah. And we do Cardone University. I bought it for my whole company, 30-some employees. But every morning I take my son to school. He's already got his pages of reading in, and then I talk to him about it. And then we also watch our Cardone videos, our Cardone University videos on the way to school. So I'm sure he'll be selling something. Hopefully it's something legal at school. So, but anyway, you had some on your podcast. What's the name of your podcast?
Own Your Life. The whole thought process on Own Your Life is taking your adversities and using them as good for the world.
All right. So you've had somebody awesome, special, and pretty big guests, 2 of them actually, and you have some others lined up, I understand. So go ahead and let me know who'd you interview recently.
I interviewed Elena Cardone last week. We're interviewing Jared Glant next week, and we've also interviewed Richie Dolan and Evan Carmichael as well.
Awesome, man. Awesome. I love all of them, but Jared's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I like Jared. Hanging out with him, he's a good time.
He's a good dude.
And so, and then, any chance you can get Grant on your podcast?
Yeah, he's coming on January 16th.
That's what I'm talking about. Love it. I can't wait to listen to it. And I'm gonna shoot you some questions that I want you to ask. And if I get lucky enough to get picked by you to answer some or ask some questions to him, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, we're gonna be actually sending out a link here in the next few days for people to submit all of their questions for the Grant Cardone one. So if your audience wants to participate in that too, and Mike, I'm sure you've got some fantastic questions, especially since you're really a huge Grant fan. We're going to be opening it up, and a lot of the questions are going to be that I'm going to ask are going to be viewers basically submitting their questions ahead of time.
Awesome. Awesome. And are you going to GrowthCon?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And you're in the mentor program too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we have a lot of fun in that. I love the fact that we can network with everybody on there and get into class, the call early and stay late.
Mhm.
It's pretty awesome. So, all right. So you got the podcast. What else do you have going on, and how can my audience follow you and engage with you, Mallisa?
Yeah, absolutely. So 2020 is going to be the big freaking year. So I finally have changed a lot of my health things. I got into a car accident this year, which for a lot of people wouldn't have been that big of an accident. But with my condition, my brain's herniated into my neck. So you mix that with whiplash, it's not a good deal. It's not a good
Man,
deal at all.
jeez.
So that kind of set me back a little bit for 2019. But I did the same thing that I tell everyone to do: did a habit a week, did physical therapy, did everything, and just rebuilt from there. And my health's doing pretty good. So 2020 is going to be freaking huge. We're lining up quite a few speaking gigs in the first quarter of 2020. Going to blow things up. We run a business boot camp to help people with implementing habits on a regular basis, give them access to power leaders, allow them to access people that are going to change their lives. One person, I think, just signed a multi-million-dollar deal this week because of some connections.
Wow,
So
man.
we're changing people's lives in that. So that's what I've got going on next. And then we're going to be releasing another book here in the first quarter of 2020. So that's what
Awesome.
I've got going on. And then for your audience too, can I give them a giveaway? Is that
Heck
fine with
yeah.
you?
Heck yeah, man.
So I put together a book that's the top 3 habits that changed my life over the 2 years from rebuilding from the surgeries. And it's the top 3 ones. I mean, you do a habit a week for 2 years, you figure out what works and what doesn't work real quick.
Yep.
And it's I was using myself as a guinea pig. So it's top 3 habits that changed my life. It's completely free. So I'll send you over the link, Mike, but I'd love to give it away to your audience members so they can learn from the
Fantastic.
experience I had for those 2 years.
Awesome. Fantastic. And we'll have a show notes section, all that once this gets published. And you're on Instagram and all that as well. So I'll have those links for you
Perfect.
to find Mallisa. And look, we like to help each other out because that's the way it works. And when we put enough good out in the world, it always comes back to help you. And if there's anything that I could do for you in the future, Mallisa, all you got to do is holler out to your boy C-Roc. Okay.
Love it. I love what you're doing on here. I love what you're talking about. What are you made of? I think that's a beautiful message that a lot of people need to realize. So
Thank you, Mallisa. And I really enjoyed having you on today. And you guys have been listening to the What Are You Made Of with Mike C-Roc podcast, sponsored by Nations Lending. If you haven't already, get onto Facebook. There's a private group called the What Are You Made Of with Mike C-Roc. I'll let you in there. We'll share our stories together. I had an interesting story just recently added. Crazy Jared Tucker just added a story. It was a 38-minute long video, but he couldn't get the whole thing on there. So only part 1 is on there for about 15 or 16 minutes. But man, I knew Crazy Jared, but I never knew his story, man. And it really hit me. I actually sat there and like jerked a tear listening to it. And, Mallisa, I want to challenge you. Get on there and share your story. I know you're on here with the podcast, but, just put a little video out there. And all that are listening, join that group. I think we're up to 650 members after a month. And we want to just see if we can't get that thing to 1 million. I know we're far away from that, but I believe we can do it. And sharing stories, inspiring others. So thank you for listening. Subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and find me on social media at Mike C-Roc Ciorrocco or Mikey C-Roc. Appreciate all of you. Love all of you, and have a great week. Thank you for being a part of the What Are You Made Of podcast. So that you don't miss future episodes, please rate and subscribe to the What Are You Made Of podcast on your favorite listening or viewing apps, and follow me on your favorite social media platforms. I would love to hear your stories of past experiences and engage with you further.